Well, good evening. I missed you all this morning, not being able to speak to you. So I hope there are cold sandwiches there because it's going to be an hour and a half before I get through them. Just kidding. Just kidding. Some of there's some hitting the door now. No. We we're glad you're here. I knew this would be a light crowd because it's Friday. It's Father's Day, and we're glad that you're here. As we continue our series of lessons on our favorite songs, we asked you last year, what are some of your favorite songs? And I don't know that you knew I was going to do this, but we had some 16, 18 songs. And so we're going through all of those. By the way, if you suggested a song and I, for some reason, didn't get it on the list, be sure and tell me and we'll cover it. I had one sweet lady. Well, are you sweet, Christy? There you go. She tell you she can't be. She told when she's asleep. She told me last week. She said, I want you to do such and such song. I said, okay, I've got it on the list. And then she said you didn't do my favorite verse. And I said, well, what was your favorite verse? And she told me. And I said, I'm pretty sure I did it, but let me go back and check my records. So I came Wednesday night and I said April 12th. I said you have to listen to it on the web page, but it's there, and you can listen to it there. So if you don't think I get it, make sure, and we'll work it out. You think about songs, and tonight we're talking about living by faith. But what is it about songs that touch us? Well, I think the Lord, of course, knew that because He made us after all. But when you think about songs touch us in different ways for different reasons. We're touched by songs because of the words themselves, what the message is of the songs. Sometimes we're touched by the song because it was sung at mom's funeral or dad's funeral, and I know there's a couple of songs especially that were sung at my dad's funeral that still, and when Jim or Steve lead it still gets to me. There are songs that remind me of different places was at the time. There's a couple of songs, and I can't probably tell you off the top of my head, but I can tell you when we start singing them that this was sung at such and such church when I used to work there, and they never sung it right, but they sung it, and they sung it with feeling, and they sung it with understanding, and they just didn't do it right. But I've always said that singing and good singing makes for good preaching. And we are blessed to have good song leaders, especially in a church this size. And we have good song leaders. And Jim's excellent song leader. Steve's very good. And we appreciate them. And Jake pitches in when he needs to be. And we're thankful for all of them and for the good that they do. But in this song tonight, we talk about living by faith. The author, James Wells, we know nothing about. There is not really anything from a standpoint of biography about James Wells. He wanted it that way. The song was 1980. At first, it didn't catch on, but then after a few years, it began to be used in evangelistic efforts, not of our own faith, but of a different faith. And it eventually caught on to the point of where it is today. It is one of the most loved songs of all because it talks about faith. We understand faith. We understand faith as being that which the substance of things for the evidence of things not seen. Those things that we haven't seen, those things that are of the past that we're told about, that we know about through reading, but we don't know about through actual experience ourselves, and those things that are yet to be, those things that will one day be. We hold to those things. We hold to those bits of information. Why? Because we haven't, for instance, seen God. But we believe that we can prove, I believe wholeheartedly, I can prove the existence of God, at least to my satisfaction. And then when I go beyond that, go beyond the fact that, yes, the heavens declare the glory of God and firmament shows forth his handiwork, there is a God. Well, doesn't it make sense that he would want to reveal himself to us? Where did he do that? Through the Bible. We've talked here not long ago on Sunday morning, we talked about how we can hold to the fact that the Bible is from God, that it was made by someone that was far smarter than any man and far more complete than any man would have ever made. There's particularly internal evidence, I believe, that proves that. Faith holds then that God exists, God has revealed to us his will, and then everything that's in that, the will of God. That's faith. But as we understand the Bible, one of the great things that it talks about is that we walk by faith and not by sight. And that's true. While we walk by faith and not by sight, we still understand a great principle that the Bible talks about several other things. We stand by faith. We live by faith. We're justified by faith. We have peace by faith. Faith is important. But as we hold faith, one of the great things, skip one, is that God holds the world in his hand. That we are thankful for. As we live a life by faith, we trust God and we trust his care. We trust his knowledge and his ability to take care of us. And so we're living by faith, as James Wells wrote. What did he teach us? There are some three things that he taught. We'll look at the three different stanzas, if you will, three different lines. Although I will say this, just as a sidebar, that there is a fourth stanza that Wells evidently did not write, but the individual that wrote the music to the song Living by Faith added it, and it's not in our song. Reason it's in our songbook. But it basically talks about the second coming of the Lord. We'll not look at that tonight, but we'll look at what we have and what you just sang as we think about God taking care of us by faith. By faith, as the song tells us, our worries are replaced. Look at what he says. I care not today what tomorrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know ruleth o'er everything. All of our worry is vain. We worry, don't we? We are worrying people. We worry all the time. I had one great sister, I think I've shared with you before, that she worried about not having things to worry at times. I would go to see her and she'd say, Brother Paul, I just worry about everything. I'm a worry wart. Well, yes, ma'am. Well, you need to quit that. And we'd talk about it. And she was a wonderful lady. But yet she would say, there are times that I worry about anything for it. Let me give you some things that, no. But we worry. We worry about everything. We worry about our money. We worry about having enough money. We worry about running out of money. We worry about where we're going to get more money. We worry about our friends. What do our friends say? What do our friends feel? We worry about the weather. What's he going to do tonight? Is it going to storm tonight? Well, they say it might. Of course, they said that the other night, and I don't think we got a drop. But anyway, we worry about that. Well, is it going to storm? Has everything been protected? Is the house, trees, everything all right? We worry about those things. We worry about the future. What's the future going to hold? What's it going to be like? We worry about the politics of the United States of America. We worry and we worry and we worry and we worry. But Jesus reminds us, Martha was coming about with much serving, the text says in Luke the 10th chapter. And as she was coming about with much serving, Jesus said, you worry about many things, but only one thing's needful. And basically he told her that if she would trust in God, God would take her through. Everything would be all right. Jesus also on the mount. We worry. In Matthew chapter 6, 24 beginning, it says that I say unto you, do not worry about your life, what you shall put on, what you shall eat. It's not the life, it's not. What does it matter? What does it matter? You're going to take care. I'm going to take care of you. You're going to have clothes to wear. You're going to have food in your stomachs. You have shelter over you. He asks these four great questions, and he tells us, he says, the birds tell us, the grass teaches us, the yardstick shows us what? Don't worry. It's going to be all right. Why? Well, we'll see in just a minute. But we worry. Things come up. Things take place. And Jesus says, be not anxious anything, but everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your heart's request be made known to God. Philippians chapter 4. But what's interesting about that is what it follows. What follows is that wonderful thought by Paul in Philippians 4. Paul is in Roman imprisonment, and yet Paul, it says that he'd learned whatsoever state he was, therewith be content. We talked about that verse here not long ago. I've learned to be content. I've learned to be happy. I've learned to be all right with where I am, with what's going on. And when you think about a man that's in prison, a man that's chained to Roman guard, knowing whether he's going to get out, now I believe that he does, but he doesn't know that. He has no way of knowing what's going to happen. What does he say? He says, I've learned to be happy. How had he learned to be happy? Well, Philippi evidently had a little trouble getting some funds to him, some care to him. And he says, but I've been all right. Everything's worked out. I'm not worried. That's faith. It's faith. Faith that's able to hold on to the problems of life and get through them, knowing what? Well, knowing, as the song says, the Lord I know rules over everything. God is the one that's in control, isn't he? We have one God, Father of all, who's above all, through all, and in you all. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 6. And said to the church at Ephesus when he lists those 7 ones, well, one God. But that one God is over everything. He's going to take care of us. Don't worry about tomorrow, he even tells us, Jesus, in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. Why? Because tomorrow will take care of itself. Well, how's that going to happen? God is in control. He's the one that is above all, through all, and in you all. He's the one that's in charge. He's the one that's going to take care of us. And so we live then, according to Isaiah 26 and verse 7, in perfect peace. How do we live in perfect peace? Because God takes care of us. And so, as Wells reminds us in the song, all of my worry is vain. Jesus said, talking about the yardstick, he says, which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit, 18 inches to your height, to your stature? Well, nobody. Nobody can. Worry doesn't affect your height. If it did, I would have been 8 foot tall and been a professional basketball player. Worry doesn't do that. Worry does not even usually come to pass. Everybody has guesstimates and estimates, but it's interesting that it's said in certain circles that 72 things to worry about never. So all of our worry is vain. Let God be in charge. Let God oversee it. There was a man one time, he was a worrywart. He just worried all the time. Day he came into work, and it just seemed like he had a little more pep in his step. Everything was a little fresher. And those that worked around him, they noticed it, and they began to think something's wrong. Something's amiss with old Joe over there. And so eventually somebody went to Joe and said, Joe, are you all right today? And Joe said, yeah, I'm doing great. Well, you don't seem as down. He says, I'm not worried today. Well, Joe, how's that? He said, well, all the time I worry about everything. Worry about my kids, worry about my wife, worry about the job, worry about our money, worry about, what's going to happen to the kids in the future, college, weddings, all that good stuff. And I worry about all of that all the time. And I especially worry about my money. Yeah, I know that. But Joe says, well, I've hired a guy. You hired a guy? Yes, I hired a guy. He's going to do all my worrying for me. You did? You hired a guy? I did. I'm going to give him $1,000 a week. You're going to give him $1,000? Joe, you don't have $1,000 a week to give him to worry about your money. He says that's his problem. He's got to worry about that. We worry about a lot of things. But as Wells was right, I believe, all of our worry is vain. Jesus said, I'll take care of you. Everything will be all right. But then in the second stanza, we find that all of our trials will not win. Notice what he says. The tempest may blow and the storm clouds arise, obscuring the brightness of life. I'm never alarmed at the overcast skies. The Master looks on at the strife. We have troubles, don't we? We have trials in life. None of us are immune to that idea. We've heard before the idea that there's always a storm in our life. We're either headed towards a storm, in the midst of the storm, or walking away from the storm, only to be heading to the next storm. It's just a fact of life. Job said it best in Job chapter 3, verse 26, and yet trouble came. It does. We look at the Bible and we see individuals. We see a lot of individuals that we love, and we tell their story. Tell their stories of how they lived their life and what all they did, and how they God. Yet they did it in the midst of troubles. Think about some great ones of the Bible. Think about Abraham. Think about Noah. Think about Daniel. Think about Jeremiah. Think about Paul. Think about Peter. Think about Jesus. They all had troubles. They all had problems. They all had difficulties. And sometimes some of them gave in to their temptations. Sometimes some of them gave in to their problems. They had hurts. This Bible is so real in that it deals with people and their problems, their everyday situation. Can you imagine being a small man that jumps up into a sycamore tree in order just to see the Savior as he walks by? And he says, come down, for I'm going to your house today. What would be the first thought that would go through your mind if you were Zacchaeus? You can't come today. My house hadn't been dusted in a week, and I haven't had a vacuum cleaner, and there's nothing in the refrigerator. Zacchaeus had a problem, right? Oh, no. Come on down, Lord. Let's go. We're going to get together. Zacchaeus had a problem. Jonah had a problem. We're studying, we've been studying Ezra. Ezra had a problem. Zerubbabel had a problem bringing the children of Israel back. Nehemiah had a problem bringing the children of Israel back and restoring the walls and the worship. On and on we go. And think about, sometimes those problems become great. Those trials, they're tremendous. Peter even talked about the various trials of 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6. And that really, in many ways, that whole book is dedicated towards the idea of persecution and problems. But he talks about the various trials of faith. We have those. We have those difficulties. We have those times. And while Jesus would remind us of the mountain, this is the man that endures trials, temptations, will receive the crown of life. Blessed are they that are persecuted for righteousness' sake, he says. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Problems? Yeah. But will they win? Problems. Will they overcome us? Problems. Will they overtake us? Will they the end all of end alls? The Bible says no. The Jesus that stood up in the boat in Mark, the 4th chapter. You remember? Tired. It's the end of the day. They were going across the sea there, the Sea of Galilee, and as they were going across, a cold that storm sea there, violent at times. And the ship is tossed to and fro. And where is Jesus? He's in the hull. He's in the bottom of the boat. He's asleep. See, his faith allowed him to sleep. The others could not. Do you not care that we're perishing? And Jesus stood up, and with just a few words, his words of peace, be still. And the waters were calm. It's power to get us through. When we think about the Bible, we think about the fact that we are promised. Thanks be to God that gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. We're reminded in 1 John 4, verse 4, we're reminded as well that God always causes us to triumph. chapter 2, verse 14. That we're going to come to the Bible doesn't say, like we said, we just looked at folks through the Bible that had problems. Faith doesn't take away from the point of, yeah, you're not going to have problems. What faith does is faith carries you through the problem. Faith carries you through them, that you come out on the other side and you say, hey, we won. Yeah, we went through it. We had a hard fight. We fought hard. The Lord fought hard, and the Lord got us through. The Lord carried us through. The Lord gave us the that we needed. While the Master looks on. Notice what Wells reminds us. I'm never alarmed at the overcast skies. Sometimes it looks bleak. Sometimes it looks difficult. Sometimes it looks hard. But our trials will not win. But then in the third line, there it is. We find out that trust replaces fear. I know that he safely will carry me through, no matter what evils betide. That he's going to carry me through. I know that he's through. Faith is not optimism. Faith is confidence because of the assurance that the Lord gives us. That thought. Faith is not optimism. What is it? It is the assurance. It is the confidence that we have because of the reassurance that look, I'm going to get through. I ask you, you have a fear. If you were honest, you'd raise your hand. We all have fears. Doctors will tell us that in the 500 fears, although they'll actually, what they say is there are many fears, and they list them under, they kind of put 500 as sort of the umbrella and just list the different fears up under those 500 headings. There's many different fears. You can be afraid. You can be afraid of a number. You know, triskaidekaphobia, you're afraid of the number 13. You can be afraid of water. You can be afraid of the dentist. You can be afraid of things. But fears can be allayed. Our fears can be pushed to the side. Our fears can be overcome. Our fears can be set aside. Why? Well, we know in 2 Chronicles 16 and verse 19. Or verse 9, excuse me, that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth. The Lord's watching. And if the Lord's watching, we understand that as we've already seen, the Lord's in control. The promise is what? The promise is that I'll take care of you. I'll lift up my eyes into the hills from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. Remember Psalms 121? Sure. Why? Because God's faithful, who will establish you and keep you from the evil one. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 3. That's our God. Our God is a God that watches over us. Our God is a God that is concerned about us. Our God is not an absentee God. He's a very present God, very real. Is with us, always watching over us. And so we go back to our song. I know that safely through, no matter what happens. That God is my comfort, God is my stay, God is my help, God is the one that is on my side. Little fella. And he was asked if he would like to go. And he said, well, to the zoo. Well, what would you like to the zoo? He said, well, I'd like to walk in and I'd like to pet a tiger. You'd like to pet a tiger? Yeah. And I'd go in and I'd like to stand next to an elephant. You would? Yeah. How are you going to do all this? He said, well, Mama's going to hold my hand. I don't know that she volunteered for that job, but Mama's going to hold my hand and we're going to make it through. When we get through life, we wonder who's going to hold our hand, who's going to be with us, who's going to carry us through. The Bible tells us it's God. The Bible tells us it's God that carries us through. It's God that sees us through. You know, that often used, but such wonderful passage of Proverbs 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not upon your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will bring it to pass. Prove it to me. So why should I then care? The tempest may blow, the storms may rise. Jesus walks close to my side. So I have the promise then, as the chorus reminds us, living by faith in Jesus above, in his great love. From all safe, sheltering arms, I'm living by faith, and I feel no alarm. As we walk by faith and by sight, and that the eternal God is our refuge, and under his everlasting arms. Deuteronomy 33, verse 20. We understand this life of faith is just that. There's one day, though, that faith will become sight. There's one day when faith will roll to reality. When we all of a sudden don't have to say, well, you know, I believe that God exists. And I believe that there's a heaven. But we say, with us surety, and I think we can even say today, we know those things exist. And we know they're real. But how to get from here to there? Well, from all harm's done in his sheltering arms. I'm living by faith and trusting in him. Some trust in horses, some in chariots, but I'll trust in the living God. The psalmist reminds us in Psalm 20 and verse 7. I'll lean upon him. I'll lean upon his everlasting arm. Carry me through, no matter what happens. It's a great song. Song that reminds us where we are and how we're going to get there. This evening, if you have need of the Lord's invitation in any way, won't you all together we stand and sing?